Morning. This is the House Appropriations Committee. It is Thursday, February 13th, 2025, just after 11 a.m. And we're continuing with budget testimony for the FY26 budget. And we're delighted to have the state's attorneys and sheriffs with us this morning. And we have Tim Luders-Dumont, the executive director, and Annie Noonan, director of labor relations, and friends. So we've already introduced ourselves because you've been here before, and so we won't do that again, but welcome, if you would introduce yourselves for the record, and then take it away, please.
Tim Luders-Dumont, Executive Director for the Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. So Annie's going to introduce herself, but I also want to say Barb Bernardini, who's our fiscal steward in the department across the street, is here, has been with the department. How long have you been with the department, Barb? 17 years. So she knows where the bodies everything is. And then our director of sheriff's operations, pursuant to Act 30 of a couple of years ago, is Tracy Patno here, and she worked at the Special Investigation Unit in Lamoille County, which is one of our budgets, as you know. Okay. So just wanted to introduce her to the committee as well.
Thank you.
Annie will be the lead.
Okay, and I'll just tell you, we did not copy out all of the lots of documents. Trevor, who's your liaison, has everything he needs, and we can follow along online, probably just the higher level budgets, not all the detail, but it's nice that we have them all. We want to take a look, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Again, for the record, I'm Annie Noonan, Department of State's Attorneys and Sheriffs. First of all, I want to say that the questions that were posed by the chairs from this committee and Senate were I thought, very, very important questions. I think they were able to be answered relatively succinctly. And our budget presentation, as you saw, was really what we tried to do, is give you the meat of the actual documents, the actual budget documents. And then we answered your questions in sort of a separate addendum piece. And I thought that those were good, and they hopefully would guide us to talk to you today.
Great.
So for anyone who's not familiar with our budget, the Department of State's Attorneys has 4 budget lines: the State's Attorney's offices, the Victim Advocate budget, Special Investigation Unit, and the Sheriffs. And I'll just talk very briefly about those. So the State's Attorney's offices are 14 of the 14 elected state's attorneys. All of the staff that work for the state's attorneys are under that budget. As a reminder, our employees in the state's attorney's offices, including our attorneys, are unionized employees with the SEA. So that influences our costs and our Pay Act issues. So that's the department supported that work for that when they requested to join the SEA. The department worked with them to have that happen for them. Our victim advocates is a separate budget that came over to us, and I know people here recall this. Originally, they were funded from the U.S. Department of Justice grant, the VOCA grant, which comes through the Vermont Center for Crime Victim Services, CCVS. Number of years ago, when that federal money was challenging for CCVS came here and said, we'd really like you to pay for the victim advocates through state general fund. As a result of that transfer from going from federal money to state money, that money came directly to us because they were our employees. And so we still work very cooperatively with CCVS. We do an awful lot of conversation around legislation and other issues, and generally Jen Pullman comes to our monthly meetings with our victim advocates to share anything. So we do a lot of cross-pollination of the work because it's obviously makes sense for us to do that. Our SIU budget, Special Investigations. So there are 12 SIUs statewide, and they were created, and I wasn't at the department then, but I believe it was after that Brooke Bennett murder down in Orange County. And they were set up to handle very specialized investigations of child sexual assault and serious child abuse issues, as well as abuses on vulnerable adults. Now, I put in the packet of information that I provided to you, actually some of the statutory language. They have authority, they can do more, but they primarily focus on that. And what we support through the money that you provide to us are grants to the 12 SIUs. So we work with the SIU directors. They put in an application every year. They tell us who they are partnering with for law enforcement support. And then we basically are a pass-through to make sure that the money is going out the door properly. What's your staffing? Who are you working with? Do you actually have a law enforcement partner right now? So we monitor the money and we monitor how that goes out the door. And then the sheriffs are sort of a very, very unique situation because you have this structure in state government where you have 14 constitutionally elected officers as sheriffs. What we pay for in terms of the sheriffs is the department. The pass-through cost is the sheriff's salary and benefits. And then 24 state transport deputies. They are state employees. They are co-managed by our department and the sheriff. The sheriff is obviously on the ground locally. And their main role is to pick up folks from the correctional facilities and get them to court for their court hearings. That's not exclusively what they do. They do extraditions, they do other transfers to other facilities. But the sheriff's as a structure is that weird hybrid of a public-private ventureship, you can call it that, where the sheriffs are receiving some state money and they are receiving some county money, and they contract for other work. They receive some federal money. And I did list in pretty much tried to give you some of the really basics in the sections that are started with the blue.
Yeah, okay.
So in that.
This is the presentation that.
Yeah,
That gives you sort of the very basic, but it is that weird public-private ventureship. And so that creates its own host of kind of, I would say, challenges as opposed to problems, because the sheriffs have to make money to support their infrastructure, and that's through their private contracts. But a lot of work was done looking at this issue a number of years ago through the government operations committees. And they passed Act 30, which said we're going to really have, we want better understanding of the sheriffs and the sheriff's operations, what they're doing, how they're doing it. And we want the department to have more oversight. And one of the reasons that Tim introduced Tracy was so that there was more oversight of the sheriff's operations when there was anything to do with the state money. And frankly, sometimes it even means that other issues pop up and they often come to us, and we try to help the sheriffs navigate that. But a lot of what we do with the sheriffs is basically dealing with the transport program. That's really what we have to do. But they also have some contracts. I just want to remind you, they have contracts with other agencies and state government. They have contracts with DCF, DMH, and those are outside of our purview. The good thing is the sheriffs finally got to a point where they realized they shouldn't all be doing separate contracts with like Agency of Human Services or with the judiciary. So, and that was also legislatively suggested to them that they stop negotiating.
Instead of 14 contracts, let's have one.
Have one rate. And that I think really made things a lot easier for everybody. That was a smart move. So anyway, those are our budgets. Our challenges, I think you've probably heard us talk about this, but our very special challenges is our workload. And I want to say that that's for our state's attorneys, our victim advocates, and our sheriffs also. And I'm going to get to a little bit of that. But let me start with, if I can, I'm going to kind of go through the easier budget pieces with you first, and then we'll kind of get to the more thorny.
If you want to direct us to what document you're looking at.
So, and I'm really sorry to do this, but what I tried to do is to give you sort of these little cheat sheets. And each of the
budget is that one.
This one is the special investigation unit.
Okay.
Okay. So I tried to give you a list. So as opposed to having you dig through all of the documents, I gave you sort of a high level. Okay.
Sorry, this is, yep.
Is there a way for us to?
Yes, you can. It's a little weekend at the top.
The top.
That was the orientation.
Yeah, the orientation came in sideways.
Really?
So let's see, we have, so you're doing special victims?
Special investigation unit.
Special investigation, okay. I don't know if you can do it on your iPad. Could you fix it on your iPad?
Not so far. Now, if you lock your screen and turn vertically, you can also.
Oh, geez. Did you get it on your iPad to switch?
Haven't figured it out yet. I'm working.
On the laptop, there's a little thing at the top.
Right. Yeah. We don't have it.
Let's see, Erin will see if there's something she can figure out.
So that doesn't matter.
I know, they all came in sideways. Sorry. And I just knew I could fix it, but I didn't think about the iPad,
There you go.
so.
There was a few.
All of them came in sideways.
Sorry for the.
That's fine.
Oh, I don't. Hard copy.
But, can we share a screen? You have your iPad.
Yeah, you just share the screen, it's okay, we can figure it out later.
Yeah. Maybe I can lock my screen. I'm gonna try this.
Which one are we starting on?
Maybe as I'm trying to figure that out, Andy can start talking through it, if that's
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
If you could put it on a laptop, you might be able to make it work on a laptop and then maybe you could share your screen. Might work.
So it might make sense to do the SIU budget because it really is pretty simple.
Okay, let's do that one.
Essentially, think of it this way. It's a pass-through budget for grant administration. So as I said, we provide program support and law enforcement support to the 12th Special Investigation Unit. They apply every year. And we provide grants. We look at their staffing, we look at their operation, we have conversations, and then we try to provide them with what they need. Primarily, they're usually set up with a director, an administrative support staff, and sometimes a forensic interviewer. So they're pretty thinly staffed from that perspective. There's not the operations. And they go out and they seek law enforcement support. And I guess I'd say two things about their budget right now. That's been a bit of a challenge for them with law enforcement, statewide and nationwide, where there's less people going into law enforcement. So there's less ability for local or even state to dedicate hours to the SIUs. So that probably is one of their biggest challenges at this point is connecting with dedicated hours from law enforcement. The budget, really the only substantive change that you would have seen for the SIU is that for years and years and years, the support at the department's level was through a contracted employee. And last year, we asked for that contract to go away and to take the money and reallocate it to a permanent position. And that's what we did. And we felt that we weren't getting the connection point to the department and having somebody readily available. As you know, with an independent contractor, you don't set their hours, you don't tell them how they work, all of that, specification, you don't want to get into any trouble. So they kind of did their thing. We didn't think that was really working well for us. So we were able to talk to the legislature last year and they provided us with the position number. We did not need any money for it. So we were able to hire for that. We hired Siri Rooney, who was a 25-year victim advocate for our department out of Lamoille County. And Siri has come to work at central office to run this program. This morning, you might have seen that there were a bunch of folks sitting up who sponsored the coffee this morning, and they were from the child advocacy centers. And so a lot of our SIU directors were here this morning, meeting with legislators and saying hello. Those are our folks. Those are the people that we support through this process. They have local boards, local organizational boards that work with them. It's often, the DCF folks, it's state's attorneys and people that, victim advocacy groups, other stakeholder groups. So they have boards, local boards, and they operate that way. For us, it's a pass-through. The budget here is almost static, and it has been for years. We really are not looking at much. The 2.7% increase, it was recommended by the administration. As you know, when we receive our bills every year for things like Agency of Digital Services and workers' comp and all that, it's what they call the internal service fees.
Right.
So we got a little bit more money here to handle internal service fees.
Yeah.
That was it. So this budget is pretty much the same. As I mentioned, their challenges are basically just staffing. And unfortunately, two of our SIU directors recently One is retiring and one took a position with another. So the local boards will be recruiting. Chris St. Cyr, who's been with the SIUs for a long time and has done a really good job, just decided he was going to retire.
Where's he from?
He is up in the Caledonia office, and he also helps us with Essex County. God bless him for dealing with that. So he's done a very good job of kind of keeping that connection point and providing services. Ryan, I want to say Bajorki, right? Bjorky, yes, and he was in Orleans, and do we know where he was headed? Health? Oh, Department of Education, yeah.
Interesting.
So and of course, we stole Tracy from the Lamoille County SIU, but she is being replaced by Lance Burnham, who had been with state police for a long time and is from that area. And Tracy's actually been going in on nights and weekends to kind of get him up to speed.
So this budget is the standard increase, basically.
Exactly. Nothing to worry about here.
Thank you.
Okay. The victim advocate budget. So as I said, these positions used to be federally funded, then now they're state funded. When the money came over to us, it came over basically for salary and benefit and not much else. And that has had a little bit of a challenge. We've been paying for some of the stuff that the victim advocates need through the state's attorney's budget. It has not necessarily been a tremendous hardship to do that, but this year in budget adjustment, we did ask for $38,000 to pay some operating bills for this victim advocates, and that was approved at least in the current version of the BAA. I think the two issues here to note about victim advocates are this. And Tim's probably going to mention some stuff to you about our caseload issues, but we currently have over 23,000 pending criminal cases in our department. And the victim advocates. So what that means for our attorneys are covering on average between 350 and 400 cases. We often hear the quote, 365 cases or something like that. That's about what our attorneys are handling, but our victim advocates are handling 600 cases. Now you say to yourself, how is that possible that well, think about it this way. The Washington County office has 7 attorneys and 2 victim advocates. So the victim advocates are handling everything that flows from 7 other people. And so it's not a 1-to-1 ratio. So we don't have a victim advocate for every attorney. We have a victim advocate for every bunch of attorneys. So, and cases can have more than one victim, and the challenges that presents victims' family, helping them with comp and restitution applications and referrals to services that they need. So our victim advocates, probably one of the most important things that they do is they explain what is happening in the case with regard to the criminal system. Like people don't understand what does this mean if there's a hold without bail hearing? What does it mean that there's a status conference? Do I have to be at the plea agreement? What am I allowed to say? So the victim advocates are really the advocate for, as I said, for the victim to explain, make sure they know what the court's all about, what's happening there, and then what other services are available to them. So that's really their role. But right now, they have 600 cases. We have a vacancy savings number that we've had to embed. I probably said this joke before, and I think some of you probably heard me say this in prior years, but this system, this comes to us, okay? And we have a number that we have to meet, and when we don't meet it, the form won't go. Form blows up on us. I used to have to say to John Campbell all the time, because he'd say, well, put more money in that. And I'd say, John, if it blows up the bottom line, it doesn't go through. I used to have to explain that to him every year. No. We have a number we have to meet. The administration doesn't let us make this up ourselves. So, so here's the thing. As I mentioned, we have, when the positions came to us, it pretty much just the money that was given to us was primarily just for salaries and benefits, and have very little operating. So what do you do when you have no other places to cut? You basically have to hold through vacancy savings. So the number that we would have to hold for next year in 26 is $270,000 for vacancy savings. The translation of that, generally speaking, would be about 2 victim advocates positions being held open. In addition, it probably makes sense for me to tell you at this point that one of the things we think should happen is we need more victim advocates. I think we're asking for 6 victim advocates to basically disperse throughout the counties. A question that we had yesterday was, how do you make decisions when the legislature gives you positions? How do you make decisions as to where they go? Good question, because it really involves a lot of other people. It's not Tim and I sitting there and saying, well, this county's getting that or what. There's an executive committee, the state's attorney executive committee of 5 members. They're actually in statute saying that there has to be a 5-member executive committee. And there's a lot of deliberation. What they generally will do is they will go out to the states of there's 14 states attorneys. There's a conversation with the 14 states attorneys saying, okay, we received, I'm going to make this up, we received 6 victim advocates and 4 deputy states attorneys and 2 paralegals and, 2 administrative support. Okay, that's what we have. What do you need? And it's interesting to me that you think that they may all say, oh, I want a new deputy state's attorney, and that is not the case. A lot of times they say, no, we really need a paralegal. Our discovery, we need somebody who can handle more of our discovery. We had Bennington who said, I need a domestic violence investigator. We have so many DV sex assault cases down here. I need an investigator because that is really critical. And we don't have, because of law enforcement being so understaffed, they couldn't donate the hours. So it really kind of depends. You'd be really surprised at what they ask for. Of course, everybody would like more staff in every single title, but we know that that's probably not realistic. But asking our victim advocates to handle 600 cases means that they really aren't able to do as much as they would want to do with victims.
One thing I might add is the 600 cases doesn't include the number of victims associated with each case. So, for example, we have 24 homicides that our department is handling right now exclusively. And in those 24 cases, a family network of 30 people, 40 people might be getting the notifications from our victim advocates. So think about 600 cases representing potentially thousands of victims.
Yeah, right. So that's our challenge here is vacancy savings that we always worry about vacancy savings insofar as the fact that it's just positions.
Right, well, we know that's happened. You're not the only place for that.
Exactly,
That's how the budget gets balanced. Or
exactly.
Regardless of what the need is.
Right, right. So that's so.
What are we talking about in terms of dollars?
So for 6 victim advocates, we would be talking about 120, and I want to say 125,000 is each. Yeah. And I want to say we don't have the capacity, as you know, to manage what the increases for health insurance or retirement. So retirement's going from 26.7 to 28.8. Health insurance went up in January. So, we do our best to project what we think we would spend that year. So that's what it would be. So 750,000. Okay. All right. On to the sheriff's budget, if I can. And just as a reminder, sheriffs being that public-private ventureship where they've got to do their work to kind of support their infrastructure. And what we have with the sheriffs is an increase. We don't take in any other money here. This is what we spend for the sheriffs is general fund money. The sheriffs themselves, the sheriff's departments themselves have other money that comes in. They have our money, they have private contract money, things that they contract for. They have some federal money, and they have town appropriations, and they do things like they contract for services with local towns. I know that one of the questions that was asked in all of this was, when you have federal dollars, are you worried about them going away? Let me say the sheriffs do have some federal dollars, not through us, but through their own departments. I have asked about that. I asked, what do you think is out there that might be at risk? A lot of them have money from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. For speed enforcement, reckless driving, all of that. They don't think that money is going away. There's been no indication that money is going to go away. They also have some of them, not many, but a few of them have other money associated with a program that I'm not real familiar with, but it's called Stone Garden. What they think they do is they assist the Border Patrol for surveillance or whatever. And I don't think, no, and they don't.
I don't think the highway stuff, I mean, we don't know anything for sure,
Right.
but We're not hearing anything about roads and bridges and highway transportation stuff. That's not where we're hearing.
Right.
That doesn't mean it ever won't, but that's not what we're hearing.
Right.
So,
So I think that that's okay. They're not worried about it.
Stone
According,
Garden is the interception of people
Coming
within 100 miles of the border that they can, it's usually a border patrol thing, but it's, the sheriffs may help with it.
yeah, and I think
I
they,
think we did away, I was on judiciary and I think there was a lot of, had controversy.
yes, I think it did. Yeah.
It might have been suspended or.
I think, I called, I think you may be right. And I do think, I did ask one or two of them, is there other federal money I'm not thinking about? Because I may get asked that. And somebody mentioned that, but you might be right. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think we do much of it.
Not
It might
much.
Still, part of that whole local involvement with the federal agents and how do we cooperate.
Right.
It was when Governor Scott first came in, there was a lot of discussion about it in judiciary, so I'm not sure it's still
Okay.
that active.
I think you could be right. And I don't think they're particularly worried. I will, if I can back up to the SIU. So not through us, but through the SIUs get money from other, so primarily it's the state grants. They also get money through CCVS, which is Vermont Center for Crime Victim Services. And their money is US Department of Justice money. And it's the Violence Against Women money,
Yeah.
the VAWA, the VOCA money.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. What I understand is that there's been enough money available, secured by CCVS that they should be able to continue their grant to the SIUs for at least next year.
Okay.
That's what I hear. And that may be a question, I think you'll probably hear from CCVS and they'll tell you more about their worries about their federal money. But why do I mention it is because if that money were to go away, I suspect the SEIU directors would be talking to us saying,
Right.
we just lost $4,800. What can you do?
Right.
So
Is that about how much it is per unit?
No, that money's about 32,000 per unit.
So that was Tracy Patno. Tracy knows that because she ran the Lemoyne SIU.
Okay. There's 12 units? Okay. So I'm jumping back to your sheriff's budget and I see that you've got vacancy savings in order to balance your budget of 673,000. How many people is that?
That would be about 5 state transport deputies. We just came earlier this morning, we were up in a joint meeting on the issues of transports from the correctional facilities to the court. There were a 2-hour hearing upstairs with us and judiciary and Commissioner Demmel and Judge Zone. I didn't stay for that because I was coming down here, but we testified a fair amount about what are the challenges for the state transport team, our employees, and there are significant challenges in terms of being able to get folks from the facilities to their court hearings. Very briefly, we used to be able to rely more on the Department of Corrections to move people for us. But they don't have that capacity now. They're so understaffed themselves. So as an example, Bennington Court might have somebody who needs to be in court at 10 o'clock in the morning, 9 o'clock in the morning, and they're in Newport. So it used to basically be where we might be able to tell corrections a couple of days in advance, hey, the person that the judge wants it's up in Newport, and get the person down. That they don't have the capacity unless we give them a lot of notice. It's like we work with Al Cormier from corrections. We generally need to give Al and his team about 10 days notice. That doesn't always happen. We're not criticizing corrections because they can't manage it with their understaffing. So that's a challenge for us where we basically are sending our staff and trying to get our staff to coordinate. Maybe the Orleans team might grab somebody and get them halfway down and our folks are coming up. But I can tell you, it has exploded our overtime budget for our state transport deputies. Okay. They're also unionized under VSEA. Same thing. We've been negotiating. It has been a real challenge. And remote hearings, that's one of the pieces that they're talking about. Is there stuff that could be done remote? Corrections has its own challenges with remote, infrastructure challenges, staffing challenges. So it all ties together. our issue, corrections issue, the judge's issues. So it really has been a problem. And things that the transport team, the DOC transport team used to transport for, they are basically have said, we don't have the capacity. And we're talking in some cases, pretty serious issues. They used to transport for termination of parental rights hearings, which are pretty important hearings for people. And then the corrections was like, we can't do it, and threw it to us. And we were like, we've never done this. So what are we doing with it? So Judge Zona and I and folks in my office met, and we basically said, look, if there's we will certainly do them, but we have to prioritize certain criminal cases. If we've got a homicide case being, we're transporting for, we can't necessarily handle, we have to tell somebody that we can't get there. And the other piece of that is that there used to be more per diem, I call them the non-state deputies. Mark Anderson, Sheriff Anderson from Windham County testified this morning, and he said when his department, not necessarily under him, but he was part of that department before he became the sheriff, he said it used to be 60 employees, it's now 25. So they don't even have, and Mark Poulin, Sheriff Poulin here in Washington County, a lot of times I'll ask him, how are things going? He says, I can't recruit anybody as per diems. So all of this is playing into really bad situation. So that's why we're asking for more transport deputies. We're asking for 6 more because frankly, because the courts are asking us, can you get them here? Can you get them here? And we're like,
Rep. Iacoboni has a question about this, I think.
It was on the remote hearings. So some people, remote hearings are occurring, correct? I know when I was on the Lamoille court, there were some.
I would say less and less, but.
Yeah, and
That's
so
because-
a good example, the arraignment is the initial entry point into the more formal judicial process. For serious cases, those are going to happen in person. For a status conference, which typically happens after the arraignment, did you send them the discovery? How ready are you for trial? Have you talked about plea agreements? Those are more often a remote opportunity. And sometimes it's hybrid, prosecutor in the courtroom, defense attorney juggling 3 courthouses remote. And maybe for a non-incarcerated individual, a non-detained individual, they might come in person, they might be remote. Each judge has the jurisdiction in their county to set the rules of what's going to be remote or hybrid or in person. It's sort of case by case.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I think I've heard Commissioner Jamel talk about this a little bit, and he has said sometimes it's challenging for them to set up the remote, whether it's, because of infrastructure or they don't have staff people to be running materials down for the hearing. So I know that he has concerns, his own concerns with regard to that. So we truly believe we need more transport deputies. When we left the room to get ready to come down here, we were told that after we testified, Commissioner Demel said, I agree with what state's attorney's staff said. And in fact, I think you need more than 6 transport deputies. So I think what he's reflecting is his staff doesn't have the capacity to help us, and we get it.
Wayne, go ahead.
Yeah, I think I've heard testimony in the past that corrections officers, when they transport somebody to the hospital, for example, they have to stay there and they may have to have more than one person in, which takes away from their staff and exacerbates this whole problem.
Yep.
Just look at you.
I don't have the answer, but I just wanted to follow up on Representative Iacoboni's question. I can't understand why, in your example of someone in Newport needed to be in Bennington, why the first choice wouldn't be to do it remotely. I mean, it just seems like an awful lot of man hours, time, and exercise to. I don't profess to know the judiciary.
Or from the courthouse up there, even if the
Yeah.
correctional facility I know has its issues, but could they just go to the courthouse and do it remotely?
Right, we did.
Remote, right?
You know, significant investments over the past years to allow for those remote hearings, starting with the pandemic, and it just seems like, really? What? I mean, I wouldn't go out of my way to go from Newport to Bennington.
Unless you're in the 251.
Right, well, yeah.
Just to
We
briefly,
want to see the monument before it's not.
yes,
It falls down.
just to briefly respond to that, I think you're right. Everything you just said is correct. And occasionally where there's that opportunity, let's say a person is detained And we've worked out, I'm going to use my former friend from corrections as an example. We've worked out a deal. He's the defense attorney. We're going to time served. You're going to get out today. Then it's worth it because then we're relieving pressure on a whole bunch of flows of revenue and investment, and we're putting it to a halt. Person's out today. If the person is just coming down for a status conference, as we discussed, or an arraignment, just a basic arraignment, 99.999% of the time, they're going to plead not guilty at arraignment unless there's a great deal that's available. Then we agree. We have to do the remote because the burden on transport, the burden on the individual, sometimes going through a process to leave the facility, I'll just leave it at that, is not always pleasant. And then your DOC handoff to transport deputy down to the courthouse. And the other thing that Annie's brought up that we've heard is the judges are very underwater with the cases. And sometimes it's hard to prioritize. And so sometimes someone will be sitting, essentially being monitored by a transport deputy for several hours in a courthouse. And they get to them at 4:30, or you get to them at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That transport deputy, and Annie will talk about it, then has to go back up. And they're putting in much longer than an 8-hour day, so at least.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about the remote. I'm going to ask the question. There was some thing in Digger about the concerns with the remote that sometimes is, I think that makes sense to answer the questions that we just heard about the remote, that we should be able to do it and save time and money. But I'm just asking you, this maybe isn't for you. Maybe it's really for the judiciary about the concerns of getting the wrong person there and, getting confused as to who is being arraigned or who is being supposed to be there.
I think
Address that.
I think that there's two things. I think corrections, I mentioned this earlier, when the pandemic hit and the first wave of federal money, if you remember, was the CRF money, the Corona Relief Fund money, and then was followed by ARPA. When the CRF money became available, the judiciary let us know that they were going to be infrastructuring for remote. So we asked them, what were you doing? And their IT person worked with our IT person, and we developed a proposal. It was not as much money, but we equipped all of our offices, our state's attorney's offices, with enough equipment to be able to talk remotely. Corrections, I don't think that they actually realized what was happening. And I feel badly because I said this morning, I feel like I should have thought about, hey, should I pick up the phone and call corrections and saying, this is what judiciary and we're doing, and maybe you should put in for some money. They didn't, I believe. I don't think they got that initial money. And I think they've kind of been behind the 8 ball a little bit with their infrastructure development. So they'll talk about that. I think corrections has as much concern about how to manage around the remote stuff. The judiciary is really sort of how it manages. It's kind of up to each individual judge if they want somebody in the courtroom or not. And that is a little bit of a problem at times. Did you want to?
No, I was just going to briefly say that there's 2 types of remote hearings. There's ones for people who are held in a facility where we have had some issues. And then there's remote hearings. For example, I agree with the defense attorney. You're at work. You're going to sit out in the parking lot so you can do your status conference remotely, so you don't have to come to the courthouse. So there's 2 types of remote hearings. And the ones for detained persons are much more serious. The mistakes that have happened, I think, are fairly isolated. I got to do a couple thousand arraignments here in Washington County for a couple of years. I got during COVID, and on the other side, and people really tried their best to do. But I think it's case by case. If there's an opportunity to relieve the system and get someone out of the system, that's a great opportunity for in-person. If there isn't that opportunity, or it's very bleak in terms of the resolution, then remote is a good option. I think hybrid, thinking about what we do in general in government, being able to be efficient with hybrid work is good in this environment. And there's only one women's facility. So last thing I want to do is like for Bennington County to arraign a person detained in the Chittenden facility, sending them down to Bennington, they're just going to plead not guilty and then they come back up. That's a really tough day.
And a long day.
Yeah. And we're using a transport to do that.
And when you're taking people in and out of a correctional facility, it's the correctional officers have a lot of work to do that, to get somebody ready. When you're coming back in, there's a lot of work to make sure that they're coming in securely and all of that. There's definitely benefits for things that can be done remotely, but it's a matter of Does everybody have the staffing and the resources to be able to do it? For us, it's just a matter of, do we have enough staff to get people, transport deputies to get people where they need to be? I don't think, I feel like we have a lot of support. The judiciary, Judge Zone has, whenever there's a problem where a judge wants something and we're already engaged, the calls often come into us, to central office, and they're saying, we need to get somebody to this hearing and we're not getting, we're hearing there's nobody available. And we do try, we absolutely try to find out if is there anybody who can manage it? Can anybody get up there and do that? So we wind up kind of acting like the air traffic controller for the system to some extent. Tracy's works with that, and as does Ashley Perry, one of our other staff members, and very, very much try to get everybody where they need to go. But there are sometimes we just have to say we're nobody available. That does slow the system down. It doesn't help the backlog when we can't get people where they need to go. So that's a problem. So Judge Zone has said to me, you need more transport deputies. And then, as I said, I just heard Commissioner Demmel said, you guys need more transport deputies. We think we need them. And it's because we're doing stuff that the state government and the judiciary need done. Whether it's, hearings for DCF or DMH or whatever. So we're helping, but there's only 24 of them and they're running around, and it's just been,
So you're asking for 5.
we're asking for 6.
6. So we got a couple of 6s. Okay.
Okay. And of course, there is the vacancy savings number in there that we would like to see go away.
Right.
Vacancy savings issue. Talked, okay.
Vacancy savings was, okay.
Yeah.
Was 5 was 5 people, and you want 6 more with them. Okay.
On this one, I think, Aaron, if you don't mind sharing the screen, just as the state's attorney one is probably, I know we only have 15 minutes, but it's probably one that is, may generate the most interest.
Where do you want me to go? Do you want me to use that?
And so, yeah, the presentation on the screen, if you want to scroll to just the next 2 pages in, the next one. Annie can talk some about some of our pressures here, and then I can talk a little bit about statistics. Yeah.
Okay, great. So obviously, this is the bulk of our department's budget. It's $20 million. We did receive an increase. Most of it's general fund. We get some interdepartmental transfer money. And on this one sheet, you'll see something we talk about federal equitable sharing. That's just money that we hold in case. So when a federal it's really usually drug forfeiture money comes in, it's sitting in there. Okay, so most of our money, the money that we're getting from the interdepartmental transfer stuff is coming to us from the 4 positions that we receive money from. Yes, National Highway Safety Administration. We have 2 prosecutors who are funded by the federal National Highway Safety money, and they do special prosecution of drug or alcohol impaired driving that results in serious bodily injury or fatalities, reckless driving, or any of those activities that are causing serious injury to Vermonters on the roads. We have 2 other positions that are called stop prosecutors. Those are 2 prosecutors who are specially dedicated to prosecuting domestic violence and sexual assault crimes. Whether those positions will have any risk of federal cut, we don't know, because that's falling under the U.S. Department of Justice Office of Violence Against Women. And we don't know right now where that money may be. So those 2 positions, one is in Chittenden County and one is in Orleans County, and they dedicate themselves to that. They also serve as a resource for newer prosecutors who have not done DV sex assault prosecutions. So they specialize, so they're very, as do our traffic people. So our budget pressure is, we have a vacancy savings number of 649,000, and we have workload that's staggering. And our increased costs are really around mental health and competency evaluations, I think that it's fair to say that there's a lot more of that occurring within the system where people are coming in to the criminal justice system because of mental health problems. And so then there's the question as to whether or not they are competent to stand trial, or should there be some other process happening for them? So there's a tremendous amount of money going out the door to the point that we're probably going to break the bank on that this year. Translation and transcription services are also increasing because there are more people coming into the system who are not English speaking, and they have the right to make sure that they understand what's happening to them for any legal proceedings. So we have more transcriptions of into their native language at the time. Our rents are going to be a problem next year. We're in 7 leased buildings, so there's 14 state's attorney's office, and 7 of those are in leased spaces, and some of so with all respect and kudos to the buildings and general services people who do a really, really good job. The property management people do an excellent job of helping everybody in state government. There was a conversation, shall I say, with Orleans County, the judiciary for Orleans County, and it was sort of by mutual agreement that they wanted us out of the courthouse, and we decided, okay, we probably need to get out of the courthouse. Same thing with Windsor. Now, you know that the Windsor County Courthouse is under big construction, and we were like, so are we coming into the courthouse with you when the new building's built? And they were like, nope, you're not coming in. So we had to find new space for Windsor, which we were able to do. So strange things have occurred in the past year or so that have really will be jacking our rent up in a number of our places, probably at least 4. So I don't know. So we have challenges for Franklin County, the new Windsor, our new space in Windsor, our new space in Orleans, and Brattleboro was fun. We're in a leased building in Brattleboro that was owned by a bank, so it was pretty secure. After 3 o'clock, the doors were locked. Nobody worried about anything. They sold the building, and the new landlord put a bar in the first floor. Now I would have been like, yes, but but the problem is the elevator from the first floor goes directly up to our office and we can't, apparently because of fire code, can't like stop it from doing. I don't get this whole thing, but the security issues became really problematic because we're going there. We have to exit through the bar now. And so some of the people
Make these things up.
No, so
That's good.
some of the people were
Sorry.
prosecuting after they get out of court. They're sitting down there, so they're not too happy to see us. Let's put it that way.
Vertical integration.
So just briefly, what was the reason for not going back into the Windsor facility? Is it just a reorganization?
Not from us, that we were
No,
not.
not from you.
Yeah, we were not invited back in. I think again, I don't want to speak for the court, but at one point there was something that said, well, should we actually have one of the parties, one of us being the prosecutors in the same building with us? And I don't necessarily think that that's been a problem. There's plenty of places where we've been in there.
Mhm.
I think everybody knows their ethical obligations not to get in the elevator and try to, tell the judge some new information. I think we get that, but we were not invited back.
Thanks.
So for this budget, I wanted 2 other things. So that for internal service fees, we don't necessarily control any of that. Like we just get bills, and we have been able to maintain them. Part of the problem that we're having with our IT is that 2 things. One is that the ADS charges have basically what we budgeted and what we have paid this year was way more, like double what we thought we were getting. The second thing is I presented in the budget adjustment memo and I made a mistake initially, but we still have the SharePoint issue of maintaining media files. And you heard me say, I think that like we said, I got a call from ADS saying, you're 2% of the state workforce and you're using 65% of the SharePoint. So we are not yet relieved of that. I think our bill for what we're going to owe this year, we've already paid about 48,000 and we have 18,000. We were told to budget $18,000 a month. So again, that's something that's going to hit again next year for our budget. And ADS costs, we can't control those and they're going up. So those are some of our pressures. I hope I didn't miss any. Did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I mean, the one thing that, as Andy, I think you only have a couple minutes left, and if you move, Aaron, and thank you so much. You flipped the screen around. Which is incredible.
Thank you.
All victories in government.
Incredible too.
Yeah.
So if you move to the page that says new and or the asks,
Very last.
the asks, right? Staffing request for FY 26. Just get right to the point. We did include, as Annie noted there, we included the transport and the victim advocates because they're separate budgets, but just wanted to have it in one place for you as well. So some of our pressures, right? I mentioned the 94 pending homicides. There's 96 pending as of December 10th. We're staffing 94 of them, so we're staffing 98% of the homicides. Those include attempted and conspiracy charges as well in the homicide context. 23,000 cases, about 13,000 misdemeanors, I think about 7,000 felonies. Our state's attorneys and deputy state's attorneys have 300 to 400 cases each. That's spread across the family division, the civil division, the criminal division, and you might ask what's in the civil division, post-conviction relief cases. When someone has been incarcerated, they can file for civil relief, and we staff those as well. You'll see one of our requests here, and we're in the spirit of being very direct this week. So I'll just say one of our requests is we need a PCR attorney, a post-conviction relief attorney that's also going to help with public records and training. Just wanted to mention it because the Defender General's office has dedicated staff to this. We don't have any dedicated staff. So the same attorneys with 300 to 400 criminal cases in the criminal division, which is a separate space, are also staffing the post-conviction relief cases.
Which can come back 20 years later.
Yeah.
Generally, and it often happens when the defense attorney passes away and, a couple of weeks later, somebody says, I had ineffective counsel.
Yeah.
Now, we've got to go find the records, try to find the law enforcement and other folks to defend, not our work, but the work of the defense attorney.
And just so it's kind of like, we're at central office, we have a centralized appellate attorney. We don't have a centralized post-conviction relief attorney, and it's the same justification. The amount of resources that have been used during someone's entire process through the system and through sentencing. And then on the tail end, we want to make sure there's integrity to those sentences. If there is issues, we want someone thinking about those issues and stipulating to relief for those persons. If there aren't issues, then we need to defend those convictions because we have victims who have sometimes relied on these sentencings for 20, 30 years. I had a homicide PCR here in Washington County. Everyone had pretty much died who was involved in the case, and it got filed. The only person that was still alive was the defendant. And so then we were defending that case. So just one of the pressures that we deal with. Annie can walk through some of the other requests here, including the paralegals, admin support, and 4 deputy positions that we're seeking.
So I mentioned the media. You heard us talk about that at another point, the SharePoint in the media. So one of the reasons that a lot of our offices are looking for assistance from paralegals is because somebody has to wade through those hours and hours and hours of media files to figure out what occurred or what we need to be looking at. Discovery, getting those ready for discovery. We turn, and just even the amount of materials that gets transported or gets transmitted for discovery. When we ask our offices, what do you need? They say different things. They really do. Some say, I need a paralegal. I'm so buried alive with discovery. I'm so buried alive with these things. One of the things I want to point out about, we've asked for paralegals to help with that. We've also asked for administrative support staff. It's important to know that most of our offices have, several of them have only one administrative support staff. Most of them have only 2. Okay, so you're talking about an entire law office, because that's what we are, 14 law offices that have a bunch of attorneys and we might have 2 administrative support staff. That's the norm. Chittenden has more, Chittenden, because of course, the amount of work that comes through Chittenden their numbers are just really high. So Chittenden has more, but most of them have one, have two. And some of the smaller offices only have one. So that's been a challenge for us consistently. And then when you have things like an expungement order, and the judge puts it through to us, and only, one of the 3 counts was expunged, and somebody's got to go through that entire file to figure out what's getting expunged and what's staying. That's really like hand work. So paralegals or admins do that. You want to talk to docket manager?
Yeah, so if you go to the next page, Aaron, you'll
No, it's
see,
right there.
actually, yeah, so we are requesting a docket management position. This is the snapshot of all the pending cases as of December 10th on just one neat sheet organized by county. We have cases that are languishing, not because we don't want to prosecute them and move forward with trial, but we increased our trial utilization by 65% last year. We used 65% more trial days. That's very good news. We moved 3,000 cases out of the system. A year ago, this chart said 26,000, 109% clearance rate. We're making some progress. For us to make real progress, we need to be looking at the other end of the alligator mouth, the cases that are languishing, that are not going to get trials. A nonviolent misdemeanor, a filed case, an officer investigated it, probable cause was found, an arraignment took place, and they're not making their way through the system because of the backlog. The violent felonies are getting trials. The repeat offender folks are sometimes getting trials, but we think we owe it to defendants, victims, and everyone else to have an eye on that. So what does a docket management position do? You're culling the data, cases, let's say 2 or 3 years old, making offers, dismissing cases where people have moved on or where people have done other restorative practices. We don't have an eye on the old side of the docket. We're only focused on the waves coming over the ship, the new cases coming in. And we don't have a focus. Having a dedicated person who can do data analytics. Right now, myself and Ian Sullivan from Rutland, the state's attorney, are the data analytics team for the department. We pull judiciary data, we send it out, we say, come on, let's get some work done here. And we've done a really good job. I'm proud of the work we've done on data, but we don't have a dedicated team. This person could help send stuff out weekly to the state's attorneys. Hey, you have cases that are this old. You have cases that are this old. Have you considered making offers in these cases? So we think it will help relieve the caseload. And we think it's a 2025 approach to looking at the way our system is working and at times not working. And again, the judges have to prioritize the violent cases. We understand that. We would appreciate things like a dedicated misdemeanor docket, because someone with repeated retail theft in a downtown, you're all getting called about it. And they're like, why isn't my trial happening? Right? It's because the aggravated domestics, the homicide, the sex assault cases, and the DUI 4s, those are getting trials, and they need to get trials. So it's a way to think about our docket management issues from a strategic statewide approach. And it doesn't necessarily have to be an attorney. There's some helpful aspects. If it is an attorney, they can make dismissals on their own. But we're at this point, we're just looking to have support in that area.
Okay, Wayne?
Statute of limitations.
And that would be one of the things that we look at, right, with this docket manager, pulling the cases and saying which cases are going to run up against the statute of limitations issue. There's certain, if people haven't shown up for court and been arraigned, but they've been charged, the statute of limitations doesn't start until they get arraigned. So anyway, great question.
So we're kind of running into our noon hour, and if you want to just sort of give us whatever the highlights are, and then, just Trevor is your liaison for the details.
So we also included 4 deputy state's attorneys. I want to say that, thank you for last year. You gave us positions and limited service positions. There are 4 deputy state's attorneys right now sitting in the 4 position for limited service deputy state's attorneys right now that are not filled, which, by the way, has helped us with some of this year's vacancies. But if we are able to move those to permanent positions, we don't need the 4 that are listed here. We're not looking for 4 and 4. We would love to have those limited service attorneys made permanent, or actually all of those positions made permanent. I can work with Representative Squirrel to kind of do the up and down if we're able to move some of those positions. That's one thing I want to point out. a fiscal support staff, we have a department of 175 people and 29 offices. And you're looking at our fiscal person, Barbara Bernardini. Ashley Perry helps work with the sheriffs on their bills, which come in all day long. I help Barb as I can with sort of these 10,000-foot views of things. But we really need another fiscal support person. We're just very, very busy. And talked about the PCR attorney. So that's really our ask for all of this. If I know that Representative Squirrel is going to ask me, so Annie, if we gave you everything you needed, what would it look like? It would be about $3.6 million. I hate to always.
That includes the transports and the.
Yes, that includes the transport.
Everybody.
Across
Everybody,
all
yes. But I can work with Representative Squirrel to kind of go on and up and down on this to figure out what we. It's really, I think, Tim and I were yesterday testifying about our workload, the workload out in the field. And it's really, it's pretty dramatic that you have like attorneys with 365 cases, victim advocates with 600 cases, administrative support staff who are just really buried alive all the time. So we appreciate everything that this committee has done and the legislature has done for us over the years. And I feel badly that we are in here again, but we are losing people. We're losing people to other agencies and Vermont state departments and agencies when they say, I really like what I'm doing for you guys, but I have no work-life balance. I'm on call at night. I'm going to go from having a caseload of 365 to a caseload of 60. Yeah, we can't, and by the way, I don't have to come to the office except one day a week. And we don't control our day-to-day life. The court does. Court schedules 40 arraignments and 5 of our attorneys are on that schedule. They're in the office. We're in the office all the time. I do want to say that. Because I think that our staff may be out there hearing this. We're in the office all the time. Everybody.
Our buildings are not vacant.
No, not one bit. And so it's really, we can't compete in some ways with trading that kind of a caseload for a much, much reduced caseload. And, I only have to come to the office 1 or 2 days.
And the private sector as well, after they get all their trial experience with us, private sector law firm would love to pick up some of our.
Yeah, but we appreciate that you have incredible pressures from everybody. We do.
Yeah.
It's an interesting year.
It is an interesting year. I would know. Yeah.
Thank you for all you are doing and all of your staff. It's a lot of work and I appreciate it there. So
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thanks. So committee, we are going to have our public hearing after lunch at 1:45. It's in room 11. So I suggest that you could maybe get there at 1:30, just so we're kind of ready to go. The Senate will be joining us, Senate Appropriations. And